They say you should never stop on the old bridge after midnight. Do not lean over the rail. Do not call out to hear your echo. And if you feel a drop of water touch your wrist when the river below is silent as glass, do not wipe it away, keep walking. Because here, under rusted bolts and flaking paint, a child's voice rises with the tide. Some nights it sounds like laughter carried from far downstream. Other nights it's only breath, a wet whisper that knows your name. People talk about lights that flicker across the water with no boats around. About footprints the size of a child's bare feet appearing on the walkway and vanishing at the center span. A courier once swore his bike chain seized on the bridge and wouldn't move until he looked down. He saw a small handprint blooming on the surface of the river, fingers splayed as if pressed from below. Believe the city with its schedules and street lamps, or believe the current which remembers what it takes. If a marble rolls to the edge and stops between your shoes, do not pick it up. If a little voice asks, "Will you help me cross?" do not answer. Some crossings go only one way. His name was Kai, a 28-year-old delivery driver who worked long shifts across Kowloon. His days were filled with the hum of traffic, neon lights flashing off his mirrors, and the steady rhythm of packages moving from one hand to another. Nights were quieter, lonelier. Kai often found himself crossing the old stone bridge that spanned the river on the edge of the city. It was a shortcut, saving him precious minutes on his way back home. The bridge was no longer in use for cars. It sagged under its own weight, concrete chipped, lampposts leaning. Locals preferred the new overpass a few streets away, but Kai never minded the silence. He told himself he liked the stillness, the way the river reflected the city's glow like scattered jewels. But the truth was simpler. He was tired and the bridge was faster. From childhood, Kai had heard stories about the river. Drownings, accidents, unlucky children who never made it home. His grandmother used to warn him never to look down if he heard his name called from the water. "The river remembers," she would whisper. And sometimes it asked for more. He laughed at her warnings back then, the way children do. By the time he was grown, those stories felt like nothing more than folklore. Still, the bridge unsettled him at night. The iron railings were damp with mist, even in dry weather. The air smelled faintly metallic, like rust mixed with something sour. And sometimes, when he paused to light a cigarette, he swore he heard faint splashes in the water below, though the current was calm and black. On most nights, he ignored it. He had no time for ghost stories. But one evening, just past midnight, as he pushed his bike across the bridge, he noticed something odd. A pair of tiny shoes placed neatly at the midpoint, toes pointing toward the rail. Kai stopped, heart quickening. The river below rippled, though no wind stirred. And for the first time in years, he remembered his grandmother's voice. "Don't answer when it calls you." Kai crouched to look at the shoes. They were small, no larger than what a 6-year-old might wear. Faded canvas, frayed laces, damp from the mist that clung to the bridge. Something about how neatly they were placed unsettled him, as if a child had stepped out of them only moments before. He looked around, expecting to see a parent or someone playing a cruel prank. The bridge was empty. He told himself it must be kids from the estate nearby, daring each other to leave offerings for the ghost stories. Still, when he nudged the shoes with his boot, they felt heavy, sodden, as though they had been soaking in water for hours. He shivered and walked down quickly, refusing to look back. That night, long after he returned home, he awoke to a sound that didn't belong in his small flat, the dripping of water. He checked the sink, the pipes, even the window. Everything was dry. The sound grew sharper, rhythmic, like droplets falling onto wood. It was coming from the corner where he dropped his bag after work. He switched on the light. Beside the bag sat a marble-sized puddle of water, glistening on the floorboards. In the center of it lay one of the tiny shoes. The same faded canvas, the same frayed laces. Kai staggered back, his breath caught in his throat. He had left the shoes on the bridge. He didn't sleep after that. The next day, he returned to the river, determined to prove it was a trick of exhaustion. He crossed the bridge quickly, forcing himself not to glance at the water. Halfway across, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. The screen had lit with a notification, but there was no message, no caller ID, just the faint outline of a handprint smeared across the glass. His stomach lurched, and the device slipped from his hand, clattering to the ground. He picked it up with shaking fingers. The handprint was gone. Only his reflection stared back at him in the darkened screen. But behind his reflection, for the briefest second, he thought he saw another face, a child's pale and wet lips moving silently. That evening, as Kai tried to convince himself he was imagining things, the sound of water returned. Drip, drip, drip. It came from the window this time. He opened the curtain, but the glass was dry. Outside, the river lay still and black under the bridge. Yet faintly, from below, he heard it. A small voice, almost playful, rising from the current. Kai, help me cross. His blood ran cold. He hadn't told anyone his name. Kai tried to dismiss it. He told himself that exhaustion played tricks on the senses, that the river distorted sound, that children's voices carried from the housing blocks along the bank. But the excuses dissolved with each night that passed. The phenomena didn't stop. They multiplied. The dripping water followed him everywhere. On the bus, he swore he heard it hitting the floorboards beneath his seat. At the delivery warehouse, his parcels came damp, labels smudged as if left in rain, though outside, the sky had been clear. At home, the smell of river water clung to his clothes, sharp and earthy, no matter how often he washed them. One evening, he avoided the bridge entirely, taking the longer route over the new overpass. His phone buzzed again at the midpoint, screen lighting without cause. This time, the words were clear. Why didn't you stop? His throat went dry. He shoved the phone into his pocket and pedaled faster. When he finally forced himself back to the old bridge, hoping to break the spell by confronting it, the shoes were waiting again. This time, both were soaked through, squelching with water though no rain had fallen, and scattered between them were marbles, glass spheres glinting faintly, rolling uphill toward him in perfect unison. He ran across without looking back. But he couldn't run from the dreams. Every night, he sank into the same vision. The river below the bridge, a child's silhouette bobbing in the water. Small hands reached up, nails ragged, clutching for the surface. Then the dream twisted those same hands, grabbing his ankles, yanking him down into the cold, black depths. He woke gasping, his bedsheets damp as though he had been dragged half-drowned into waking life. The strangest moment came a week later. Kai was pushing his bike across the bridge when he saw another figure standing at the midpoint. A little boy, dripping wet, his back turned. Relief struck him for a moment. Maybe it was just a lost child. He called out, "Hey, are you okay?" The boy turned. His face was pale, his eyes sunken dark, his lips parted in a smile too wide. Water streamed from his hair, trickling across the pavement toward Kai's feet. "Play with me," the boy whispered, voice carrying over the quiet river like a chill. Kai stumbled back, nearly dropping his bike. The boy blinked, and in the span of that blink, he was gone. Only the shoes remained, sitting neatly where he had stood. Shaken, Kai asked around the neighborhood the next day. Old residents grew silent at his questions. One finally muttered that, years ago, 3 children had drowned in that river while playing on the bridge. 2 bodies were recovered. The 3rd was never found. Since then, people avoided the bridge after dark. The river doesn't give back what it takes, the man said, eyes averted. That night, Kai returned home to find his apartment changed. On the floor near his bed, tiny wet footprints trailed from the window to his desk. On the desk, his phone lay glowing, though he hadn't touched it. A new message filled the screen, but there was no sender. "Help me cross." His apartment was silent except for the faint dripping, dripping, dripping. And Kai knew, with a dread that hollowed him out, that the child from the river was no longer waiting under the bridge. It had followed him home. Kai couldn't live with the silence anymore. Every night the dripping grew louder. Every morning he found more signs. Damp footprints on the tiles, water stains blooming like bruises on his walls, the faint echo of a child's laugh in the stairwell. He realized he couldn't just avoid the bridge, he had to understand what had happened there. He returned to the neighborhood elder who had once spoken of the drownings. This time, Kai pressed harder. Reluctantly, the old man shared what the newspapers never printed. Decades ago, 3 boys often played near the bridge, daring each other to climb the railings and toss marbles into the river. One evening, during a summer storm, all 3 slipped. 2 bodies were pulled from the current by fishermen at dawn. The 3rd boy, youngest of the group, was never recovered. His parents left flowers at the bridge for years, but eventually moved away, broken by grief. The boy's shoes and marbles were never found. Some said the river had claimed them, others whispered the spirit had taken them along to wait for company. The details froze Kai's blood. The shoes, the marbles, the voice asking to be helped across. These weren't coincidences. They were the remnants of that child, clinging to the world he never left. Kai searched archives at the public library, hoping for closure. He found a brief report tucked in the back of an old paper. Missing, Wang Taklam, age 7. Presumed drowned. No follow-up, no resolution. Just a name, lost in the tide of time. Reading it aloud in the silent library sent a shiver through him. For the first time, the haunting felt personal. This wasn't some nameless ghost, it was Taklam, a child erased by neglect, remembered only by whispers under a bridge. That night, when Kai returned home, his phone lit up again. But this time, instead of the familiar plea, a new message glowed across the screen. Say my name. His hands shook. He set the phone down, but the dripping grew, deafening, echoing through the apartment, as if water poured from the ceiling. The shadows stretched long, pulling around his bed. Kai whispered into the darkness, "Taklam." The dripping stopped instantly. The silence was worse. Then, from the corner of the room, came the faint sound of marbles rolling across the floor, circling his feet. He realized the truth with a sick certainty. The boy didn't just want to be remembered. He wanted someone to answer, to acknowledge him, and once you did, he wouldn't let you go. The night Kai spoke the boy's name, everything changed. He woke at 2 a.m. to the sound of water lapping against his walls. Startled, he leapt from bed, his feet splashing into icy puddles that hadn't been there before. The apartment floor was slick, reflecting the ceiling light like the surface of a river. His phone buzzed on the desk, screen glowing. Across it, letters dragged themselves slowly into place. Come to the bridge. The dripping grew louder, turning into a rushing, as though the river itself had forced its way inside his flat. The walls trembled. Marbles spilled from the corners, rolling toward him, circling his ankles. And then he heard the voice of a child, close now, as if standing just behind his shoulder. Kai, help me cross. Terror drove him out the door, down the stairwell, through streets that gleamed with unnatural wetness. He ran until the bridge rose before him, its railings skeletal against the moonlight. Mist clung to its span, and in the very center stood a figure small, drenched, barefoot. The boy, Taklam's head lifted slowly, water streamed from his hair, down his hollow cheeks. He extended one hand, clutching a marble that glowed faintly in the dark. With the other, he pointed to the river. Come, he whispered. Cross with me. Kai's breath came in ragged bursts. He wanted to turn and run, but his feet felt nailed to the concrete. The shoes were there again, neatly placed at the midpoint, waiting for him to step into them. Behind him, the city was silent. Only the river spoke, a black mirror stretching endlessly. The boy stepped closer. His eyes were pools of shadow, yet his smile was childlike, pleading. You said my name. You see me. Don't leave me here. Kai's throat burned. I can't. You're gone. You drowned. The words twisted the boy's face. His smile widened into something monstrous. His small frame convulsed, water pouring from his mouth as he shrieked, then drown with me. The river exploded upward. Invisible hands gripped Kai's arms, his legs, dragging him to the rail. He screamed, clawing at the ground, but the marbles scattered across the bridge, rolling beneath him like slick stones, pulling him forward. The child's voice was everywhere, shrill and furious. Kai's body slammed against the railing. Below, the water churned though no wind stirred it. Reflections of pale hands clawed at the surface, reaching. The boy pressed his icy hand against Kai's chest, pushing. His touch was stronger than any adult's, as if the river itself flowed through him. Kai gasped, his vision blurring. For an instant he saw not one boy but many dozens of children, their faces pale, eyes wide, mouths open in silent screams. The river had taken more than he'd ever known, and now it wanted him too. No, he shouted, fighting back. His fingers closed around the boy's satchel, the ghostly outline of it hanging from his shoulder. In a desperate motion, Kai tore it free and hurled it into the river. The water hissed as if struck by fire. The boy's scream split the night. His form flickered, his grip loosening. The satchel sank slowly, vanishing into the depths. The other faces dissolved into ripples, their pale hands sliding back under the current. For a moment, silence returned. The boy stood before him again, smaller now, no longer monstrous. He looked like what he once was, a child, trembling, soaked, eyes full of grief. Don't forget me, he whispered. His form shimmered, breaking into droplets that rained softly onto the bridge. Then he was gone. Kai collapsed to the ground, gasping, his palms raw from gripping the rail. The marbles lay still around him, ordinary glass spheres glinting in the moonlight. The river below was calm once more, dark and endless. But Kai knew it wasn't over. Dawn emptied the river of its menace. But Kai could not shake the feeling that the night had merely stepped back to breathe. He pushed his bike along the embankment, socks squelching in his shoes, fingers burning where the rail had chewed his skin. By the time he reached his flat, the hall smelled faintly of algae, as if the river had followed him up 7 flights of stairs. He said nothing to the building manager, filed no report, told no one about the bridge. He showered until the water ran cold and sat on the floor with a towel around his shoulders, listening for a drip that never came. The apartment was dry, impossibly dry, as if the night's flood had been a dream. For a few days, the signs receded. No wet footprints across the tiles, no marbles rattling under the bed. He returned to work, took the long route home, and forced himself not to glance toward the old span. But memory is a current, and currents circle back. One evening, while sorting parcels at the depot, he found a glass marble in a padded envelope. No sender, no address, just its perfect sphere winking up at him. He set it down carefully, but when he opened his locker after shift, another waited inside his helmet. At home, he emptied his pockets and a third rolled out, tapping to rest between his shoes. He didn't remember picking it up. That night, he dreamed without water. In the dream, the bridge stood in an ordinary dusk, traffic murmuring from the new overpass. Midspan, a boy sat with his shoes placed neatly side by side, palms on the rail, watching the flow. He never turned. He didn't need to. Kai knew the shape of that small bag the way a sailor knows the coastline by smell. He woke to silence. On the windowsill, 3 marbles had arranged themselves in a straight line, reflecting a pale stripe of morning. Beneath them, a faint ring of dried water marked the paint. The bridge still stands, People hurry across the newer road and say the river has forgotten. Perhaps it has. But when the air tastes of iron and the mist beads on your wrist like sweat, keep walking. If a small voice rises from the black water and asks you to help him cross, do not answer. Not every crossing returns. Ghost stories cling because they're more than fear, they're memory that refuses to sink. The boy beneath the river was not only a restless spirit, but a wound left open, a life cut short and never grieved properly. A lost shoe, a satchel, a marble rolling against the tide. These were fragments of a childhood, abandoned, replayed again and again on the current until someone finally answered. Kai's mistake was not crossing the bridge, nor even looking down. It was speaking the boy's name, acknowledging what the city had chosen to forget. In that moment, the boundary between living and dead thinned, and he became part of the story. Once you see, once you answer, you carry the weight. Perhaps the river doesn't demand vengeance. Perhaps it only asks for remembrance. But remembrance is heavy. To remember is to feel the water cling to your skin, to taste the iron on your tongue, to hear the echo of a voice too small and too young to be lost. That is the real terror of such legends. Not the shriek in the night or the cold hand pulling you down, but the quiet plea that lingers long after. Don't forget me. Because forgetting is another kind of drowning, one the living commit every day. So when you walk across an old bridge and the mist beats against your wrist, resist the urge to look over. Keep moving. For beneath the calm surface, memory waits, and memory never lets go.